Welcome to the Jaybefaunt channel. I am your host, James Fauntleroy. So good to see all of you guys here. Happy Liberation Day to all of you. It is October 7th, 2025, and we are live. So welcome back to every single one of you guys. The Jaybefaunt channel is also part of Revolutionary Blackout Network, so you can find me there on Thursdays for the Savvy and JB show, and Sundays for the JB show. If you guys have not already, please go ahead and give a like to the stream. This helps us out very much, be able to teach, to educate, to inspire, to activate as well. So thank you so very much to everybody who has done so far and who will be doing so towards the end of our program. Also, if you guys have not already, you guys can also subscribe to my Substack at jaybefaunt.substack.com. Why do I say this? This gives you email notifications whenever I write any articles, upload any clips, or go live just like this. So you guys have gotten that already in advance. So thank you so very much for that. Also, if you guys would like to, you guys can also ask me questions and I can respond via video. Or if you guys would like me to video react to a particular video that you guys have sent, then you guys can do that through QBounty at qbounty.com/Jaybefaunt there. Welcome to every one of you. We have a big show today. There's a lot to talk about. We're going to be getting into today. But first, I want to say a blanket hello to everybody that's watching. As I always, whenever I have a guest, I would like to be very respectful of their time and get to the content and to the discussion at hand. But what are we going to be discussing today? Let's take a look at the thumbnail, and then we will get into this. So later in the show, we're going to be talking about transplants for the rich, kidney transplants. That's why I'm looking very ornery right there, because we're going to be talking about what's going on in the realm of kidney transplants at a couple of medical institutions. So this is going to be one that I think is very important for us to get into, especially in regards to healthcare, especially the wealth disparities within healthcare. We're going to be getting into that. A little bit later in the show, we're going to be talking about it's killing my pockets. So we're going to be talking about the utility bills of people that are skyrocketing. Why are they skyrocketing, and what should be done in response to this? So we're going to be getting into that a little bit later. But we will be talking to one of the activists from Florida Palestine Network. Of course, I said today is Liberation Day. It's October 7th. So we're going to be talking to Miss Rasha, and we will be having a great discussion, especially about the liberation of Palestinians. And we're going to be doing that right now. So Florida Palestine Network, Miss Rasha is joining me, and so good to have you finally on the channel. It has been a long time coming, and it's something I've been waiting for with bated breath. So good to have you.
Thanks for having me. Yes, I think even, James, you reached out pre-accelerated genocide. So I'm glad to be with you on this day 2 years later, with a comrade that has shown up consistently. And we're truly, honestly, really grateful for you at Florida Palestine Network, and of course, Central Florida and the liberation movement as a whole. So thank you for having us.
Thank you so very much for coming on. I really want to jump into this right now because, well, before we do that, let me share this video, because this video, whoever edited this, they deserve their flowers, because the editing was chef's kiss.
You should actually put his little handle. He's a young organizer with us at the Florida Palestine Network, and he did a phenomenal job.
Yes, he did. Okay, let me share this. And I was there, so I get to say that I was there, but this is so cool, guys. Let me share this with you guys first, and then I have another video to show you. I'm not sure if you saw, but it's wild. You guys made an impact. So let's go. That was wonderful. Thank you so very much for sharing that so that people can see, like, look, this is what's going on, and these are the people out on the ground. So thank you so very much for that. So, one of my first questions that I had for you is, how long has the Florida Palestine Network been around, and how did it start?
Thank you so much. I'm actually just obviously going to start with the obvious that, today marks 2 years of resistance for the Palestinian people, and of course, 2 years of accelerated genocide. And something that we do at the Florida Palestine Network is that every moment that we show up, we reground and recalibrate that it is an honor to show up for the Palestinian liberation movement, that the Palestinian people of Gaza, the West Bank, Jerusalem, all across Palestine, gave us the opportunity to work towards total liberation for all oppressed people. So today, heavy-hearted, of course, for the 680,000 Palestinians that have been murdered and millions displaced. But we also understand that that Zionism will fall, and we are near liberation. So thank you. So the Florida Palestine Network has been around for over a decade. It was just a few of us out here across the state of Florida because, as you know, especially in one of the most racist states of Florida, there wasn't too many folks or comrades that were involved in organizing around Palestine. So we did a lot of like the protests, the Nakba remembrance. And it's interesting enough because the generations that came before us that were part of different revolutionary organizations, they started organizing out here in Central Florida. So the time of my father and like our parents, we at our latest DEPCA workshop, we just played a video that's about, I want to say like 30 something years old, of our now DEPCA instructor, who's a youth organizer, her mom teaching my older siblings and cousins DEPCA, and now she's teaching DEPCA. So the groundwork has been done by the generations of the diaspora that were forced to flee their homes in Palestine and that have resided here in Orlando, Florida. So it's definitely not new, but specifically the Florida Palestine Network has been around for over a decade. It's intergenerational. We are an anti-imperial organization that works, of course, for the liberation of Palestine, but of course, all oppressed people. And we do that through political education. We have the Political Education Committee, the Ditch the Dems, which we're calling Ditch the Duopoly Committee. We have an anti-genocide coalition that was born out of the FPN's Power Mapping Committee. We have Impact and Outreach Committee, where we do different kinds of workshops for DEPCA and culture, tatriz. So political education, obviously direct actions, mutual aids through our movie nights for mutual aid programming in Gaza on the ground. And of course, coalition and base building, so that we understand that we have to move from mobilization to organization, and that the path to liberation is a long one, but it's near.
Thank you very much for that. And the thing is, it's like, I'm thinking about how heavy it is on a day like today. And I can't speak from your position, because do I know what it's like to be part of oppressed people? Yes. But for so much atrocity to happen at one small period of time, and it's been happening 75 years, yes, but a huge chunk has been concentrated in the last 2 years. That's a wild ride, mentally and emotionally. And how do you stay sane through all of this? Because I look at the resilience of Palestinians, and I'm like, but they shouldn't have to go through it in the first place, right? And I'm trying to be very civil in the way I say this, but how do you stay sane within an insane system?
I think I don't know if a lot of people would even agree with you there, but I think that there has to be, you have to be able rage, you have to be able to embody rage. And if you do, like, there's no reason why no one should be angry in this moment or feel like everyone should feel insane, bear witnessing a genocide on their screens. And also, I think it's bare minimum to keep your sanity for the sake of the liberation of the people. I think in the beginning, I think 2 weeks into the genocide, I remember, telling myself, like, what feels like a nightmare for me or for all of us out here in the diaspora, co-strugglers, is the reality for the Palestinian people on the ground. So we have a duty and a responsibility to continue to advocate and disrupt and organize. And something as when FPN chanted "no business as usual" alongside people across not just the country, the world, we meant it. We meant that there's no business as usual until a liberated Palestine. And I think as a Palestinian, I also have a responsibility to bear witness the pain of my people, in the sense where there's an Arabic word, mas'uliyah, which means responsibility and a commitment, right? So I think that, there's no choice. But to your point, in the sense of, yes, to that Palestinians, that we have a right to resist, and we full-heartedly push back against any condemnation of the Palestinian resistance. And a lot of our education in the beginning stemmed from decriminalizing the resistance, and also pushing back in the same note to the fetishization of just Palestinians as resistance fighters and freedom fighters. Yes, there are all those things, but Palestinians, to your point, deserve to not only dream future, but to live future. And I think it's important. And yes, Palestinians are resilient and Palestinians are steadfast, and we practice simud. But Palestinians deserve to have their home intact, that is only erupting in laughter, in joy, and in love. Our children should only be concerned about getting their homework complete. Our women deserve to have their babies through proper, real reproductive rights, right? True feminism of having access to appropriate measures of healthcare. And our men deserve to be humanized. And I think that's something that so much of what we see through the propaganda work is the dehumanization of the Palestinian people that has conditioned people to believe that Palestinians deserve this. And as you know, condemning the resistance also conditions people to not only believe that Palestinians deserve this, but to accept it, right? Or to accept it and believe that they deserve this. So there's a lot of work and, intentionality behind how we even talk and show up for Palestine.
Yeah, there's definitely a parallel between what we experience as Black community and what Palestinians are going through, especially when it comes to, like, there was an article recently that talks about that you saw this little Palestinian girl that was among the devastation, and they didn't even show how she was a girl. They said Palestinian person. And I'm just like, wait a minute. Yes. You guys are doing what you do to us, because, like, for instance, a lot of people have to think about it, but some people don't realize, like, when they talk about us, especially Black men, even if we're little boys, we're still regarded as older than what we are, so that it takes our innocence away, right? Mm-hmm. The Black women, the innocence is always taken away. And so now they're doing the exact same thing. You could be a 12-year-old little Palestinian boy, and they'll still think you're a Palestinian man. That and then they will say that if you're a man of fighting age, then you deserve to be dehumanized, and you deserve to be murdered for a supremacist state. And I'm gonna, I hope I don't get in trouble for this with the YouTube gods. But even if you are a resistance fighter, you do not deserve to be dehumanized, because you're literally fighting for your own freedom. And and for the life of me, some people will look at me like I'm crazy for saying that, and they will still lionize slaveholders like George Washington.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's outlandish. It's awful. I mean, the Palestinian resistance fighters are our freedom fighters. These are Palestinian, many of them young men who their fathers have been imprisoned, their mothers raped, that were born and survived, Israel's invasion, brutality, 2008, 2014, 2020, right? This isn't something, these are Palestinian men that are putting their lives on the line. And absolutely, I think that, like, to your point, the language that's used is not because they think that it was just a person or a man. It is deliberate. It is deliberate language that's used to dehumanize the Palestinians and allow people on the other side, either reading or listening to the news, to take that aspect out, to remove the humanity out. And there's actual think tanks that exist that are providing and offering these what words to use and not use to describe how Palestinians are killed, martyred, and who they are. And our Palestinian men are our kin. And a big part of it is, even for the Palestine Network, we refrain from using too much of the Palestinian women and children, Palestinian men, Palestinian women and children. All Palestinians deserve life. And sometimes even the well-intended allies don't understand that they're contributing to the dehumanization of the Palestinian people. And it's also a very important and imperative how we speak about the Palestinian people, because sometimes it's like basically the NGOization, right? Because when NGOization happens, it becomes palatable for just imperial systems to continue to do what they do, but have people feel and believe that they're doing something to relieve, the humanitarian crisis, versus a man-made forced famine of the Israeli occupation that's backed by U.S. empire, or 77 years of occupation. So I remember, even people asking me, like, in the beginning, how do I adopt an orphan? And while, that's beautiful, and, we should be taking care of our Palestinian orphans, my reaction is, we want to stop creating Palestinian orphans. We want Palestinians to be raised by their parents. We want Palestinians to stay in Gaza, where they are free to move, or they are allowed to live out their dreams. And I think that sometimes even the deliberate and direct propaganda to dehumanize the Palestinians, and on the other side, there is this unfortunate liberal aspect that has, what I believe, contributed to the 680,000 Palestinians being murdered. Like, there's no, Palestinian life shouldn't be negotiable on who deserves to live or not.
I'm going to skip to the fourth question that I wanted to ask, because we're in the same vein right now, and I want to make sure that we keep the continuity of this particular part.
It's your show, James. It's you. I'm just a guest here.
But this question is within the same vein, and I think it's really important that we touch on this, because a lot of times people will. Let me ask the question, and then you can answer. So the Florida Palestine Network has been reading in book clubs and reading a book by Palestinian authors. The latest was the reading of Perfect Victims and the Politics of Appeal by Mohammed Al-Kurd. with the Jewish supremacists claiming everyone in Gaza and by extension all of Palestine are Hamas. Is there such a thing as a perfect victim? And if not, then why do you think we cling to that narrative? And is that notion holding more or less weight since the Palestinian Holocaust began in 2023?
The Palestinian Holocaust started even before 1948, but it's accelerated. But
accelerated. I do apologize. I correct.
No, don't apologize. I'm just, my brain is everywhere today. But I was just gonna say something that I always think about is before I get into specifically that book is, I know that we've talked about this is, when a Black man is murdered by the police, our communities, we have this knee-jerk reaction where we want to humanize this, Black man. And it's like, he has a clean record. He's never been detained. He has a good job. He lives in a good neighborhood. He's a churchgoer. And it's like, it doesn't matter. Even if he did something wrong, he does not deserve to be killed and murdered by the state, right? And the same thing is with the Palestinians is like, he's a journalist, he's a healthcare worker. We talk about their favorite hobbies, and we've tried every aspect to reinstall the humanity of the Palestinian people, that while using like these intended tactics to humanize our people, we've dehumanized them, right, and exploited them. And it shouldn't matter if he was the perfect victim or she or they were the perfect victim. What matters is that Palestinian life is precious. All Palestinian life is precious. And it shouldn't matter if they held a specific political line. That Palestinian deserve to live. It's not up to Israel or the US to determine that.
Yeah. That's a beautiful response. I think that we need to all start holding life at the same level instead of holding one life above another, because the problem within the capitalist system is that the life of someone who is affluent is considered greater than the life of somebody who is poor and destitute. And so we do the same thing with Palestinians. Because it's funny. It's funny how a lot of the Jewish supremacists will start saying, oh my God, on October 7th, 1,200 people were brutally murdered. Not forgetting that a lot of those people are actually in conscription. So therefore they are military, which they were targeted for being military.
And many of them were killed by their own soldiers.
Yeah, the Hannibal Directive, right? If anybody who's watching this who has never heard about it, Google the Hannibal Directive and get back to me. And then on top of that, because to Israel, all life is not precious. Because if all life was precious, we wouldn't be going through what we're going through right now.
Absolutely not. And I think what we're seeing is just their intentions come to surface. And what we're seeing is also that the world is absolutely in tune with this highest level imperialism, which is capitalism, and how it's starting to translate into the genocidal atrocities that's happening in Gaza, what's happening in Sudan, the Congo, what's happening here on Turtle Island. So I think that the world will never be the same, that people cannot unsee what they've seen on their screens, and that the appreciation for just the liberation movement, for understanding that Gaza, when we say Gaza is our compass, and what we mean is that Gaza is our compass that will lead to the liberation of all people, right? To smashing Zionism, to destroying capitalism, that inevitably will end imperialism. And so understanding, and a lot of it is, and that's why we do so much of the political education, is just preparedness. Even when you read about the resistance fighters historically, a lot of it was alignment of theoretical understanding for the preparedness of what is going to be a successful protracted war, right? So
Yeah.
all of this is when we say all empires fall, and sometimes it's mentioned that this all suddenly happens. It is, yes, it's sudden, but also it's because of the small jabs that are taken, right? So protests, direct actions, boycotts, civil disobedience, and of course the resistance fighters. Like, this is a part of the jobs that will lead to the empire's fall once and for all, inshallah.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me go on to the next question that I wanted to get into as well. So there's been an estimated 680,000 Palestinians in Gaza that have been murdered by Israel, which you have pointed out. And since this has been happening since October of 2023, in the escalation of this Holocaust, we currently have people like Senator Bernie Sanders finally calling it a genocide after almost 2 years. Do you think that calling it a genocide will move the needle in government action to push for an arms embargo, aid to flow in, for an actual negotiation to happen? Do you think that our representative Maxwell Alejandro Frost has been effective in representing Palestinians in Orlando? I know I had to toss that one.
Let me take a few breaths before make a dot. I mean, I don't know. When I got sent the article around Bernie Sanders, the first line was condemning the resistance. So for me, one, you're 2 years too late. And then you're again condemning the resistance, the liberation fighters. And do I believe that it will move the needle? What will have an arms embargo is him making that move. At this point, we are beyond you calling it a genocide. We don't need permission from elected officials or the system that is contributing and resourcing this genocide to call it a genocide, right? So we need action. That was timed out. Him, AOC, other Democrats, liberals, Maxwell Frost. I encourage people to just Google Maxwell Frost, Palestine, Orlando, and you will see, what the Gen Zs call the lore, like his FPN lore. He was once upon a time part of the Florida Palestine Network. He was a marshal at our protests. He was a safety lead. He chanted. He did a speaking. I met him back in 2020 during the George Floyd protests and mobilizations, where we were demanding that our county, divest from police. So I think that the only question we had to ask from the Florida Palestine Network was to continue his support on Palestine. So we believe that he built his campaign on the pain of our people. And 2 weeks into the primary of his first election, and this is pre-accelerated genocide, he released an Israel position paper, and where he abandoned his commitment to the Palestinian people. So what we've seen in the beginning of the accelerated genocide, like, you can go back into like FPN's, we had like his face on a milk carton when the ceasefire, we're like, where are you? We pushed him on ceasefire. And then when the coalition happened, we had 2 targets, and one of them was him, and it was to push him on getting him to vote. While some of those are successful, he still continues to support, I think, this genocide, because his policy is actually very much pro-war. If you were to look into some of his policy votes, not just for Palestine, but I think what we see so much is the performance versus showing up for the people and doing what you've been elected to do. So I think that's what really inspired a lot of this. Inspired the Ditch the Duopoly Committee, where when it came to elections, we rolled out our Ditch the Dems. and how we have to continue to disrupt the duopoly, and that these systems were never meant for us. And it's not going to be Democrats or Republicans that lead to our liberation, while the electoral process alone is not suffice, and we all understand that, but we need something that will counter that. And we do believe in reinvesting in community care, and how do we do that, political preparedness. And so my point is that, these elected officials, sometimes I think the Democrats are even more dangerous in their liberalism than right-wing Republicans, because what happens is that people, find themselves filing behind these electeds and think that they're doing the bare minimum and that they're untouchable. We just released a post around, state representatives voting for more Israeli bonds and thinking that, we wouldn't notice. And then we get attacked by people that support these elected officials. And for us, it's like, we are here for the people, right? And when we divorce ourselves from like the American culture of individualism and really ground ourselves in the collective, then that's, it's easier to continue to have this political clarity and being clear-eyed in this work. So for us, we're not really stressed too much about, these Democrats in the sense of calling them out and demanding that they adhere to our calls, our demands. So there's a lot of work to do. And I think that, we have pretty much, I think that you're part of the Central Florida work. And I think that there's a lot of organizations that are doing this work, and we have to continue to build this base so that we can be in coalition. And, yes, the protest was powerful, rain or shine, we show up for Palestine, but more than that, it is a tool that we use to continue to organize. And so just having that deep conviction and understanding. And when we talk about discipline, we're not talking about just showing up on time. It's showing up when you're tired, exhausted, and pushing back against the defeatism that is unfortunately sometimes pushed down our throat, right? So,
well, the protests do make a lot of noise, and I want to share this. I'm not sure if you saw it, but somebody was complaining about what Florida Palestine Network was doing on Saturday. Let's take a look. So it says, walked into my room in downtown Orlando, and this is all I can hear. Oh, wait, hang on. Make sure the sound is all the way up.
Yeah, we need to please hear it. Okay. All right, cute.
Yep. And they said basically F their staycation, I guess. And I'm like, yeah, you know what?
A staycation.
Staycation.
Was that the Bohemian Hotel, I'm assuming?
Yeah, that was the Grand Bohemian. Yep. I'm like, you can afford to be at the Grand Bohemian, and you got mad because people were talking about liberating another group of people that is experiencing a 21st century Holocaust.
Right.
You get mad from your perch at the Grand Bohemian?
I just don't have words for this anymore. I mean, I think it's just, you're literally using a TikTok platform, which is like so much of what's happened to the Palestinians has been displayed on TikTok. So clearly you must have scrolled across images of dismembered children, or a father holding plastic grocery bags of body parts of his child, or, it's just, for me, that I I'm at a loss of words when people no longer can understand what's happening. Because for so long, it's like, if we say it this way, this is going to be the post, this is going to be the tweet, this is going to be the protest, and we got to say it this way, we got to share this Palestine, Hind Rajab, this little girl was shot over 300 times. This will really, wake up the US, right? But also then you meet people, James, that we were flyering downtown, some of the comrades and I, and let me say, we got the poster up on Mills, and it as soon as we got the table, it was like, and then someone's like, "Release the hostages!" But then we're putting up another poster, and people are like, "Oh my gosh, thank you for doing this. We'll try to be there." So we're reminded that it is the people, the masses of people, that will lead to our liberation. Not these elected officials, not people that aren't really in community and have this deep understanding. So, I think maybe that's what keeps me sane is the people.
Yeah. And that's a beautiful thought, because I feel like there's more compassionate and empathetic people in the world than we realize. It's just the uncompassionate and the vitriolic voices, they are more of a minority, but they're the loudest.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I think. Right. But as far as what is it going to take? Man, this one scene that on social media that's gruesome, that people will see that's happening to our people, or this one more protest, or this one more thing, that's really going to show them, look, coming from a Black American, this is the same country that stood around a lynched Black man who was castrated and burned, and then they used to take pieces of his body to put on their mantle.
Sick.
So I don't expect anything from them. The best thing is really for the resistance to continue. And by the resistance to continue, I'm talking about not just over there, I'm talking about over here as well. Because this I know it's going to sound kind of religious for me to say it this way, but this system is wicked. There's absolutely nothing that can stop it except for the people rising up against it. Absolutely nothing. Empathy and compassion have to be the number one North Star that we use in order to end this system. There's no other way.
And I think, to your point, right? So when we say that, and when we obviously we're laughing at this video, but it also shows that this person is very embedded in idealism, overconsumption. Okay, sure, people deserve staycations, but also to feel entitled that it's being disrupted by the people's demands to end the genocide. When you think about it, right, it goes back to, yes, Gaza is a North Star, and also that class antagonism is the center of the liberation work. Because when people understand class struggle, then we understand that it's because of capitalism that continues to have people respond and react just like that TikToker. And I think that compassion, yes, and all of, but the political education piece is going to help the cohesiveness of really our collective coherence and political consciousness, that when we do hear chants in the streets, we ask ourselves, what's happening? How am I? And I think that there is this romanticization of liberation work. I know I've said this a lot, but it is romantic, yes, to be in community, and it's romantic to fight for liberation in the sense we are among comrades and for a greater world. But this isn't meant to really, it is sacrifice for the collective, right? For the better world that we hope to see for everybody.
Yeah, definitely. That's a beautiful point too, because I think a lot of times some people, they romanticize revolution and liberation to the point where it's almost like they want to be remembered and regarded but the biggest part of that work is not sexy, right? It's not at all. You know, it's just it's grunt work, it's hard work, it's work in the background that people just do not see. And this is why we talk about mutual aid.
Invisible labor. I think that people, you know, and I think that these are conversations that we've had, right? Like,
yeah,
yes, I love to see the kufiyas and I love to see the watermelons, and you know, and it's like, but and right, and in addition, and I think a conversation I've also had with like Muslim community members, right? It's just, you know, I know Russia, everybody has their role, and my role is to donate. And I was like, in 2 years into a genocide, yes, everybody has their role. Like if you're a graphic designer, awesome. If you are the organizer, if you are like, you are donating. And also, in addition, you have a responsibility to disrupt the imperial core. It's not, oh, I've done my part, I'm going to go to brunch. No, like you should be showing up, that because if we're showing up in numbers, if it's the masses, literally, when we say the masses, then that's how we do it. But to say that you've done your part and your role, it's not about feeling good. And I think these are conversations, and Islamically, you know, I'm not going to, obviously, also, we're not going to too much of religion, but Islamically, justice and liberation is at the forefront of our faith, right? Fighting for the liberation and justice for people is a big supplication to our Lord Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that is your submission to him. And so for me, spiritually, I do believe when he asks me what I did in these moments, I have to be able to say it with confidence and conviction that I did what I was able to, right? And I think that sometimes the romanticizing also muddies some of the way we show up as individuals. So we're grateful for you, for how you show up, and like really giving so much of our organizations a platform to talk about this important work and get people involved. It really does help, and you show up when you can, even everything you've gone through, and just know that like we appreciate you so much at the For Palestine Network.
Thank you very much. Do you have time for 2 more questions?
Okay, sure.
Okay. One of the questions that I wanted to give you is more of a reaction to because I think this is very important, because this has recently happened to the global Samud flotilla that has happened. Greta Thunberg was just released, and she actually talks about her experience on the flotilla. So I would like to get your reaction to this. So it says Greta Thunberg gives her first words after she was released from Israeli prison, where she was beaten, forced to kiss the Israeli flag. She says the story it's not about them. The story is about Gaza.
Leaders, so-called leaders who are supposed to represent me, who continue to fuel a genocide, death and destruction, they do not represent me. And this is a last resort. That this mission has to exist is a shame. It is a shame. And I could talk for a very, very long time about our mistreatment and abuses in our imprisonment. Trust me, but that is not the story. What happened here was that Israel, while continuing to worsen and escalate their genocide and mass destruction with genocidal intent, attempting to erase an entire population, an entire nation in front of our very eyes, they once again violated international law by preventing humanitarian aid from getting into Gaza while people are being starved. And we want to also emphasize that we do not only need humanitarian aid to enter Gaza, we need an end to the siege, we need an end to the occupation and the oppression. This action was challenging our extremely violent business as usual that is preventing these war crimes from happening. And that is what this story is about. We cannot take our eyes away from Gaza from all the places of the world that are suffering, living on the forefront of this business as usual systems, Congo, Sudan, Afghanistan, Gaza, and many, many more. What we are doing is the bare minimum. This genocide and other genocides are being enabled and fueled by our own governments, our institutions, our media and companies. It is our responsibility to end that complicity. And I also... No, not heroes. No, we are doing the bare minimum. What we are doing is not in any way, no one has to come to the rescue of Palestinian people. What we are doing is hearing and acting upon their calls for people all over the world to take action and end our complicity, to use our privileges, our platforms to take a stance against this that is in every way unjustifiable.
So your thoughts about what Greta just said?
I think Greta did a phenomenal job with articulating, right? Sometimes the media and even people that, you know, put a lot of energy into, you know, what seems very mainstream, they seemed very much grounded in their intention. And they said, we have a message to the world, and the message is Gaza. And no matter what happens outside, the brutality that they experience under the Israeli occupation forces, the regime in Israeli occupation jails, her and another participant came out saying, it can spend hours and hours telling you about the torture, but I want to share the stories of the political prisoners of the Palestinian people. And another point that she says is that Palestinians do not need your rescue. We're here to adhere their calls and to use our platforms, our privileges. And, you know, she does mention the bare minimum. And I think it's, you know, very easy for the media to try to make it another story. And that's also very deliberate, is to, you know, manage to talk about, you know, these individuals versus, you know, what happens to the Palestinians and why they're doing what they're doing. I think it was very, very imperative what they did in that sense, and with even the narrative and messaging, because a lot of what we know about why we're here today is because of the narrative wins by the occupation and the oppressor, and, you know, conditioning people to accept and believe that this is what's meant to happen. And they are challenging it on the world stage, quite literally. You know, what we're seeing in Europe with the people of Italy and is what we need to see more of here in the West. So it's beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. And with that, with the global Samud flotilla that has happened, I say that their mission was successful. And, you know, trying to push even further to get the aid there.
Mm-hmm.
But my final question is, what solutions do you see being the most effective in helping to be the assistance for Palestinians to liberate themselves, as we are Americans living in the imperial core?
Yeah, and I think what we need to do is just the political cohesiveness of understanding. And so a lot of that is through political education and understanding that we have to push on class antagonism and disrupting capitalism, while understanding that Gaza is a North Star. So a prioritization around in ending this genocide, right? But understanding these core beliefs and how we got there and how it's landing here with, you know, families being separated and kidnapped in these immigration detention centers that are awful and being disappeared, and how it all not just relates, how this is actually one struggle for liberation. So the Palestinian struggle is, yes, Palestinians deserve to liberate themselves and will liberate themselves, but this liberation struggle is not just for the Palestinian people, it is for all of us. And I think understanding it to be one struggle under the fight of capitalism and imperialism is important. And you're doing an amazing job of like the balance of, centering Palestinians and showing up, understanding that this isn't on the burden of just the Palestinian people. So I think continuing, yes, the political education, but getting involved in an organization that has anti-imperial principle, is revolutionary by not just theory but also praxis. How you show up as a collective, practicing in the BDS, boycott, divestment, sanctions. So also, there's just so much that I think that can be done. And I think that people really have to understand that. And it's not like they'll come for you if you know, like, they're already, fascism has been here. This isn't new, right? Like these systems were never meant for us, right? So, and it's also like, you don't need to imagine that it's your kids. We should, to your point, care if it's anyone's child, right? If it's any person. Yeah. And so I think just recalibrating and just getting involved in organizations, going out to Palestine events, continuing to practice boycotts, and disrupt that business as usual. It was not just a chant in the protest. It's also a praxis, and just practicing discipline, and also like community care and love is important in how we're doing this. And I think being in deep relationship and deepening those relationships among comrades is important. These are people that you're fighting for total liberation with. So
yeah, absolutely.
Sorry, and the mutual aids of Palestinians in Gaza.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so very much for all that advice, so that we could be better, as far as pushing for liberation, because as the phrase goes, nobody's free until we're all free, right?
Absolutely. And FPN comrades are excited for part 2, so you can meet the teams and the different committees. So we look forward to coming back. And hopefully, if you're able to come tonight, we have our community reflections immediately after a direct action that's led by Frizzo and other organizations. FPN's holding a reflections night where we'll have a time to recalibrate and reflect on the last 2 years of resistance and the accelerated genocide, revolutionary songs sang by co-strugglers, poetry, to tie up after these week of actions.
Okay, thank you so very much. Let me share where they can find you, and what do you have coming up next as well, so while I show this.
Yeah, so we have the Simul School, which is November 1st. We had our first one, which was the Ghassan Kanafani semester, the People's Revolution. And so we had our first one, which was The Pen by Hazem Jamjoom, which talked about literature, revolutionary literature and the literacy. We just finished on Saturday before our action. We had The Sword, which is a resistance and struggle, so armed struggle with Tara Alami. And then our November 1st one we have upcoming is Legacy and Liberation, and how to tie it all in, and really like the coherence ideologically and into revolutionary action. And so we also have our DEPCA workshop October 25th. It's workshop 3. That's through our impact and outreach. We don't have the flyers up just because it's been a week, but we have our movie night with Central Florida SJP on October 30th, and we'll be hopefully playing and presenting the Flotilla documentary from the early 2000s. And we have book club that will be announced. So just if you can go to our Instagram, we've been shadow banned. So please like, comment, save, share, all the things, because it helps us get our word out.
Absolutely. Thank you so very much for all of this beautiful information so that people can become more in solidarity with all of you who are across the Palestinian diaspora. And my heart is with you and all your people, Ms. Farasha, because, you know, as I was explaining to somebody earlier, because they were saying, like, what does caring about Palestinians have to do with Black people? And I said, it's a boomerang effect. It started off with us who, you know, Native Americans and Black people here. It went outward, and now it's affecting people with Palestine, but now it's going to come back to us, and it's going to re-intensify just like it did to us back in the past. We want to stop that boomerang so that it doesn't affect us or anybody else ever again. And so I think a lot of us see ourselves in you. And so we don't want it to happen to us, and we don't want it to happen to anybody else. And so I think that's where the solidarity comes from. And I just want to thank you for helping to educate myself and our audience in this, because you are an invaluable resource. You are a walking library, and you and all the members of Fuller Palestine Network have been so wonderful and gracious and allowing me to be able to learn more from you guys. And I hope in the future, in the near future, I can have a panel of all of you on, you know, to discuss a little bit more deeper, more in depth, so that, you know, we can also help educate more people as we move along in this as well. Yeah,
the comrades are ready and excited for that. And we are also just grateful, and we've learned so much from you. And, you know, a day like today to be in community with you means a lot. So, you know, thank you for fighting for my people, your people, our people. And, you know, we're going to push back against any kind of disenchantment and defeatism. That is what Zionism wants us to feel and experience. And until total liberation. Free Palestine. Thank you.
Yeah, free Palestine. Take care. Thank you so very much. All right, everybody. That was Ms. Rasha from the Florida Palestine Network. Thank you so very much for tuning in for that interview. I think it was very important for us to talk about that, especially on a day like today. So it is very important that we keep our focus on what's going on with different groups around the world that are experiencing genocides, that are experiencing injustice and exploitation from the Imperial Core. And here's the thing, because a lot of times I get a lot of Black people, especially Black Americans, that say, well, we should focus on our own people. I think we can focus on our people, and we can also have solidarity with others who are being oppressed. And to think that Black Americans can only focus on one group at a time is an insult to us. And I don't believe that we should insult our own people by saying that, oh, we can only focus on one group at a time. Black folks, we can walk and chew gum at the same time. We can. And solidarity should not be transactional. I'm going to say that again. Solidarity should not be transactional. Because if you see somebody suffering, you help. And some people can get upset about that and say, well, this particular Palestinian or that particular Arab has said or done or said or done something to me. But do they own and run the system? Are they systemically doing something to us as a collective? If something happens to another human being, shouldn't we help because it's just the right thing to do? So I think that's one of the reasons why I think it's so important for me to have this discussion, because we're getting to a point where we want to become self-isolationists, when that is also a tool of capitalism to invoke individualism. And where has that gotten us? It has not gotten us very far. And so having solidarity with other oppressed groups around the world is what scares the parasite class the most. So we should give them something to be afraid about. So with that being said, if you guys have not already, please go ahead and give a like to the stream. Thank you so very much to everybody for tuning in for this portion of the stream. It's deeply appreciated. And we shall get into the comments, and I'm going to check to see if we have any Rumble rants and any gift subs on Kick. So we shall take a look at that. Okay, so no Rumble rants at the moment. Let's go into Kick. You see if we have any gift subs at all. We do have a chat on there. Okay, so let me go into here. Let's say hello to everybody, by the way, while we're at it. All right, so we have Edward saying, "What's up, JB? Good to see you." We have Zero says, "Hello, Mr. Fauntleroy. Always good to be here." KD Lewis, my brother from another mother. Just saw you a little bit earlier. Says, "Glad to see you were able to get the live started on time. Much love, brother." Yeah. I haven't even had lunch yet. Boy, I'm telling you, you know how hard I want to eat in front of y'all on stream right now. I got a snack sitting right there saying hi. And I'm just like, are you just going to sit right there? Huh? Waving at me while my stomach is growling? While my stomach is sounding like the beginning of Rack City by Tyga? Like, come on now. My goodness. If I start talking about food a lot today, you know why. I was even talking to Rasha about a chicken, spinach, and mushroom Alfredo pizza would hit so hard right now. With thin crust and maybe a little bit of feta cheese on top. Dear God. And some diced tomatoes. And a little bit of that garlic drizzle. Don't get me started. Anyways. Move on, JB. Move on. Bright's coming in saying, "Sup, JB? Hey, everyone." Zero says, "When does this man not have a guest?" Quite often, actually. I don't know. Here's the thing. You might be kind of new because I haven't seen you too much within the last 2-3 weeks before that. But there's been a lot of streams where I didn't have a guest at all. So I don't have guests as often as some people may think. I've actually been trying to get more guests because I've been kind of blank, especially on my guests. But yeah. Katie Lewis says, "Long live the resistance." Right? Like, everybody wants to cheer for Luke Skywalker in Star Wars, but then when the actual rebellion happens in real life, some people want to get caught. Kat says, "Hi, JB. Here late, was watching Nico's live. Tell that brother I said what's up. Did he have his baby yet? His baby might be a little overdone now. But you know Nico. Nico likes to make sure everything's set in place. 10 fingers, 10 toes. You and I both know that baby's gonna be cute as I don't know what. And it's a girl. Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I can see the photos now. If Sears still did photos and they exist in Brazil, he'd be all up in that Sears trying to get as many pictures as he possibly can. And I'm here for it. All right. I don't know. Babies are awesome. Anyways, except for changing diapers, but you know, not everything's perfect. Jacqueline says, "Hey JB, hey everyone, good to see you, Jacqueline. Nice to have you." All right. We have Daniel saying, "Hello everyone, good to see you in the chat." Let me see. We have Holly coming in saying, "Hello, good to see you, Holly." All right. We have Austin saying, "The world will be in greater danger if we don't stand up and unite together against the tyrannical rule that we are in. The tyrannical rule will put more damage on us." Absolutely. Thank you so very much for that. Interesting, Jacqueline. Jacqueline says there was a mural painted by Palestinian children that used to hang in London hospital, but after complaints, it was removed. This is the level of Zionist pettiness. They got mad over a mural painted by children? Gosh. Terrible people. All right, we have... Sorry. Rondo says, "Peace, peace, peace, fam. Good to see you." All right. Let me see. Sean Miller says, "Terry." Oh, Terry. And then Terry says, "Sean." You guys become best friends. I love to see it. I love how things like this come together. Sean on the kick side says, "Good afternoon, JB. Currently hoping our veterans on the flotilla are brought back home soon. Free Palestine." Yeah, I would love to get Greg Stoker on to talk about his experience there. I've been meaning to get him on for a while now, but it's just, he's so busy, man. He is very busy. But I'm glad to see he's, okay. We have, I guess it's BCA. Says, "JB is awesome. You're too sweet. Thank you very much. You're so sweet, you're giving me diabetes." Thank you. All right. What else we have here? Traveler's Wolf coming in saying, why did I say Travelers? There's no L in there. It's Traverse Wolf. It says, "Care Bear, thank you so very much." I got to start reading these words more carefully. Let's see. What else do we have? All right. So we're going to be going through, and so we're going to get into the next stories pretty much right now. Before that, going to give a shout out to the patrons on Patreon. Before we do that, let's see. Fire Ripple says, "Much love all JB guests and all the Truth Warriors. Hands busy in garden, so I can't be in chat. We are strong." I hope the garden grows bountifully and way more overwhelmingly green than you anticipated. Yep. And I hope if it's food involved in that garden, I hope you have an overabundance. And I also wish on you cheesecake. I wish cheesecake upon you. Cheesecake with a beautiful graham cracker crust. That's what I wish upon you. May it appear in front of your eyes instantly. And may your taste buds sing. Why? Because I love you. All right. So I'm just trying to make sure I don't, let me see. Let me make sure I get to as many people as possible. See, Jay says it's the same boot on everyone's neck. Yep. Jerry says we must have international solidarity. Agreed. Jimmy says, preach. Thank you very much. I appreciate it very much. Oh, Andrea! Miss Andrea, good to see you. I was just going to say that. Walk and chew gum. Right? Like when people go, oh, well, we only can focus on just our people. And I'm like, no, we can walk and chew gum at the same time. Yes, we can focus on our people, but that doesn't mean we can't have solidarity with other people. Chris says, if you gotta eat, you gotta eat. Oh no, I wouldn't do that to y'all on stream. No. Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm not gonna do that. Okay. Let me see. All right. So Sean, why you gotta brag? Why? I should end the show right now. I should end it. I should end the show right now. That cheesecake better not be there by the time this stream is done. How you guys have a cheesecake sitting in your fridge while I'm sitting here hungry? You better enjoy yourself, and I'm gonna live vicariously through you. All right. Okay. So thank you very much to everybody for liking the stream. Let's move on to thanking the patrons on Patreon, because without you guys, this channel does not exist. All right. So make sure I didn't miss out on anything. So let's thank the patrons on Patreon. Yeah, we're good. Why aren't you ready? I feel like Amanda Priestley from The Devil Wears Prada. Why isn't anybody ready? Anyway. All right, here are the tiers, guys. Patrons on Patreon. We have Mega Jaybefaunters. We have Super Duper Jaybefaunters, Super Jaybefaunters, Jaybefaunters. We have Comrade, Solidarity, and JB members. And I think I said these names before, but we'll say them again. Anthony Malecki, Daniel Kolewa, CL, and Michele. Thank you so very much for becoming patrons on Patreon. Without you guys, I would not be able to make this work. Also, if you guys have not noticed, my channel is demonetized. So if you would like to support the channel, you can support through Patreon or PayPal, and that helps me to be able to continue this work. Thank you very much. Let's move on to the next story that we're going to be covering today. So, of course, we have Ms. Rasha on with the Florida Palestine Network. So now we're going to be moving on to this next story about people's electric bills, because it is getting terrible out here. This has to be something that's talked about. It's killing my pockets. How high is your electric bill? How high is it? I know some of y'all just paid it. Is it so high that you're going to have to cut your food budget? Is it high to the point where you may have to be put on a payment plan, or are you always overdue? Past due, I should say. How high is it? Is it so high that it comes as a shock to you because it felt like it went high almost instantly? Was there anything new that was built within your area that would make it high? Like there suddenly wasn't some uptick somewhere, was there? Let's take a look at this article because I think it's very important that we get into this because a lot of people's bills are skyrocketing. Now, this is out of Bloomberg. So let's get into it. So it says AI data centers are sending power bills soaring. This is a very important story to get into because a lot of people are now suffering. This person says, Kevin Stanley says, we can't figure out why it has increased so much. That's Kevin Stanley of Broadway, East Baltimore. Quote, no way I could continue to pay that kind of bill. That's Nicole Pastore of Guilford, Baltimore. And then it's killing my pockets from Antoinette Robinson of Greenmount, East Baltimore. So let's get into this. It says wholesale electricity costs as much as 267% more than it did 5 years ago in areas near data centers that's being passed on to customers. So let's take a look at this. Data centers are proliferating in Virginia, and a blind man in Baltimore is suddenly contending with sharply higher power bills. The Maryland city is well over an hour's drive from the Northern Virginia region known as Data Center Alley. But Kevin Stanley, a 57-year-old who survives on disability payments, says his energy bills are about 80% higher than they were about 3 years ago. They're going up and up. You wonder, what is your breaking point? Says it is increasingly dramatic ripple effect of the AI boom as energy-hungry data centers send power costs to records in as much as much of the U.S., pulling everyday households into paying for the digital economy. And so this just goes to into what is going wrong in this country, and a lot of these companies are making it so that it is nearly impossible to survive. All for what? For profits. For profits. And it doesn't help really anybody except for the very rich. So I want to share this as well, because this is something that I was thinking about, and I will continue on in the article in a second. But that person who's on disability, they will have to apply for something like LIHEAP. Now, what is LIHEAP? I talked about it a couple months back. LIHEAP stands for Low Income Heating Energy Assistance Program. So LIHEAP was experiencing cuts from the Trump administration. So it says Trump budget proposal would end energy assistance program for low income Americans. This came out back out in May. says Trump's budget proposal would completely eliminate a program that helps 6 million low-income households heat and cool their homes. Supporters of the program hope Congress will save it. And so this is, something that the Trump administration wanted to do, especially when it comes to, anything that helps out low-income Americans. And so with the energy bills skyrocketing now because of these data centers, now you have a lot of the people who are the most affected. If the programs like LIHEAP are cut, then they will be out essentially, from getting any type of assistance for their energy costs. So let's continue on the article. It says a Maryland city is well over an hour drive from the Northern Virginia region known as Data Center. It says an increasingly dramatic ripple effect the AI boom as energy-hungry data centers send power costs to records as in much of the U.S., pulling everyday households into paying for the digital economy. The power needs of the massive complexes are rapidly driving up electricity bills, piling on to rising prices for food, housing, and other essentials, already straining consumers. That's starting to have economic and political reverberations across the country as utilities and the local officials wrestle over how to divvy up the costs. Yet those same facilities are a linchpin of U.S. leadership in the global AI race. So let's go here. It says Bloomberg analyzed this data in relation to data center locations and found that the electricity now costs as much as 267% more for a single month than it did 5 years ago in areas located near significant data center activity. So it's about 2/3 of the power consumed in the U.S. runs off of a state or regional grid, where the system operator manages the trading of energy. These wholesale commodity costs are passed on to households and businesses on their utility bills, which then include other changes to maintain and expand the network that can affect even customers who aren't in close proximity to a data center, since their energy relies on the same grid. Everyday wholesale electricity prices are measured in real time by locational marginal pricing points on the power grid called nodes. LMPs are primarily made up of the cost to produce the energy and congestion. Analyzing data from 25,000 nodes used by 7 regional transmission authorities, Bloomberg News estimates how much wholesale prices in the lower 48 states have changed since 2020. So it says in 2020, wholesale electricity prices around the country hovered around $16 per megawatt hour on average, with 6 slight variations from one energy market to the next. Now, just to let you guys know, because when it comes to doing this show, I'm a broke brother. I'm not paying for a Bloomberg subscription just so that I can see the pictures of these graphs. So I did the archive version. So sorry, but I'm not paying. Look, Michael Bloomberg got enough money as it is. He don't need no more of my money. But I will read the story because it's important. But yeah, you see that 267% increase over 5 years is exponential. And this is all because of corporations wanting to use data centers in order to push for them to use AI. Like, for instance, like Twitter's using Grok, and Grok AI it has a data center. I think it's in Texas, and it's affecting working class people in Texas. And these data centers use diesel powered engines, which also pollute the air in the surrounding area, on top of the noise pollution that affects it. And now, on top of it, it's causing utility bills to skyrocket. And so, is this actually good for the people within the surrounding area? No. And this is why it's so important for us to have a completely different system, because this system is unsustainable because it does not serve the people that it surrounds. And so this is why it's so important that we focus on these stories, especially when it comes to the regular working class. It talks about here, says in 2025, electricity costs depend far more on where you're located. Prices are high in many parts of the country, whilst in some central states have negative wholesale prices, meaning more electricity is produced than consumed, right? It says wholesale prices more than doubled since 2020 in some markets, but the increases aren't felt equally. Many areas with the biggest jumps, like Baltimore, are near data center hotspots. It says of the nodes that recorded price increases, more than 70% are located within 50 miles of significant data center activity. So it says tech companies, now among the biggest and most powerful forces in the world, have staked their future on AI. Data centers, some with a footprint large enough to cover much of Manhattan, are chock full of racks of servers delivering computer power and storage needed to train and run models. Their power needs are only set to accelerate. In recent weeks alone, NVIDIA Corp said it will invest as much as $100 billion in OpenAI to support new data centers, while Microsoft Corporation struck a multi-year deal with almost $20 billion to get cloud computing power from Amsterdam-based Nebius Group NV using a New Jersey data center. OpenAI and Oracle Group forged a partnership to build 4.5 gigawatts worth of data center capacity, enough energy to power millions of American homes. So as the reliability crisis is here now, it's not off from the distance somewhere. He said that load forecasts, the expected demand for power on electricity grids, are a key factor in pushing up costs driven by the data center interconnection requests. So it's not just here in the United States, but it's also in other countries as well. And so while we're seeing this happen, it's affecting the lives of millions of Americans. This person, Kevin Stanley, says they can say this is going to help with AI, but how is this going to help me? And the point is, that's the good question. Like, how is this helping him directly? It's affecting him negatively directly, but how is this going to help him directly when it comes to his utility bills? It's already enough that people aren't getting paid enough of a living. They're not getting a living wage at all. Some people who are, disabled on a fixed income, they can't afford to be able to these rising energy costs. And the only assistance I know of for people who are on a fixed income is programs like Light Heat, which is being cut. So if that's the case, then what assistance is there for anybody who needs it? So then people just suffer. For whom? It's not affecting themselves. And also these AI data centers, how many people do they actually employ? If they really don't employ many people, then really it's just screwing over the entire neighborhood. And so this is why these corporations, as they continue to grow, they need less and less workers, but they will occupy more and more of your life in order to keep that system in place so that they can continue to extract from you. Whether it's you in your pockets, whether it's environmentally, whether it's from your health, that's what they do. And now it's happening when it comes to your electric bill. And if you don't pay your electric bill, guess what? They shut it off. What happens when your electric shuts off? Well, you're subject to the elements more. Especially here in Florida, it gets hot. In places up north, when the winter comes, it gets very cold. Your food may spoil. You're unable to communicate properly because everything relies on electricity. How you keep your phone charged? How you keep your computer charged? How do you get a Wi-Fi signal? What about the people who absolutely need electricity medically? What about people who have oxygen machines? What about people who need to power their electric chairs, their power chairs? What about people who need to keep different devices powered in their homes for their medical care? What about them? Is a data center really worth it? Especially if it's just screwing over the workers, screwing over the people. Like, sometimes I wonder, like, how much is your electricity bill? And does the size of your house justify your electric bill going so high? I've heard from people on Twitter that live in a 2-3 bedroom apartment, and they're telling me they're paying between $300 and $400 a month just for electricity. I'm like, my God, what? And the last place I was living, how much were we spending? We were spending about $250 a month, but we also were paying for water. Yep. And so that was a 2-bedroom. $250. On the more comfortable side, $275, especially in the summertime. By the time you start getting down to winter, we start to spend $230-ish, maybe $240. But it doesn't go down by much. And so you can try to curb energy costs all you want. You can vacuum the filters underneath your fridge. You can get energy saving windows. You can try to do all that stuff, but you're still going to end up still paying higher prices when it comes to your energy. And people say, oh, well, do all these different things so that you don't have to spend as much. And you're still focusing on the individual solution for a systemic problem. We shouldn't have to go through this anyway in the first place. And then on top of that, some of these utility companies are more for profit. And so then there's even more costs added on top of that. And so these AI data centers are increasing our electric bills on top of everything else exponentially to the point where people can't even survive. Is it worth it? Are these data centers worth it? And it's not even like AI is helping to improve our quality of life. It's being used to replace workers. It's not being used to improve the work quality and the work-life balance of workers. So is AI really worth it at all? In this capacity. And so I think that's one of the questions that I think we should ask ourselves. But yeah, this is what's going on. This much escalation in energy costs. This is why this system has to change, because, and then these billionaires who push these AI data centers, they'll get subsidies from the government, so they won't have to spend as much on electricity. So then who ends up picking up the rest of that tab? It ends up being the workers, not us. Sorry, not them. So this is why it's so important for us to focus on changing the system instead of just putting on a band-aid with individual solutions. All right, go ahead and give a like to the stream. Thank you so very much to everybody. Let's go and check on, see if we have any Rumble rants and any gifted subs, and then we shall move on. All right, let's take a look, see when we get the subs. All right, good there. All right, let's go into the rest of the chat. Austin says, hopefully the Palestine Network can be connected to OGAS and other forms of network. OGAS. I'm not familiar with that acronym. She can enlighten me. Thank you very much. Bryce says, over 200 now. Your electric bill. Oh my gosh. Wow. Edward says the electric bills are super high. Yeah, it should not be. Fire Ripple says, so high, I just paid $200. Nick of time yesterday, always a month behind since Pacific Power PNW raised prices 14%. Wow. Okay. X64 says, so it's going to drive up our electric bill and take our jobs? Right? That's the point. Like, it's going to do all that. Edward says, in Florida, the bills are even higher because the resident rely on central air conditioning all year round. My uncle in Florida pays an average of $800 per month. What the hell? What? He's got to live in a 6-bedroom apartment or a house or something like that. Like $800 a month. He's got to live in a 6-bedroom apartment and also drive a Tesla truck. Because ain't no damn way. Ain't no way. What? Wow. Chris C says, per Environment Energy Institute, large data centers are known to consume 5 gallons of water each day, which is equivalent to the water used a town populated by 10,000 to 50,000 people. Consume 5 gallons. I think that number is supposed to be a little bit bigger because you put 5 gallons. How many? Okay. Edward says AI purpose is to reduce costs for the employers, be eliminating jobs. Mm-hmm. Yep. Amy says, good day all. Good to see you. All right. Oh, 5 million gallons of water. Wow. Fire Repo says, in San Diego with fish tanks, part of the old business, $600 a month. Wow. It's crazy. It's so expensive. Man. All right, guys. We're going to head into, we're making good time. We're going to head into the final segment for today as well. Again, please go ahead and give a like to the stream. So now we're going to be jumping into this final one. We're going to be getting into, we're going to be talking about kidney transplants, y'all. I think it's absolutely important that we talk about this because it is, this one's a crazy story, and I got to get into this. I got to get into my mode right now. USA. I'm telling you right now, with the people who are doing kidney transplant programs, if you are tying who can receive a kidney transplant based on their income or their class status, your morals are trash. And what you're doing is disgusting. This is actually happening in this country. And am I surprised? No. It's just sad that it's continuing. And I'm saddened that this capitalist system continues because it shouldn't. And as a kidney transplant recipient, your financial and class status should not be a barrier to you getting a kidney transplant. Because healthcare should be fully and readily available to everyone. But it's not. So we're going to get into this story. And if you feel a sense of outrage, that is a good thing. Because that means that you have a conscience. That means you have empathy. Let's get into this. So this says, whistleblower claims Dallas hospitals kept kidneys from poor patients. Kidneys that were deemed unsuitable for patients at Parkland Hospital were allegedly given to others at UT Southwestern Medical Center. You heard this right, guys. Let's get that. There's a hospital. Let's get into this. A whistleblower in Dallas has filed a lawsuit containing disturbing allegations about the organ donation industry. Patrick Chase, kidney transplant program director at Parkland Health in Dallas, claimed that patients at his hospital, which generally serves a poorer population, were passed over for a healthy organ in favor of patients at UT Southwestern Medical Center, which generally helps the affluent. Peter Horsky, an investigative reporter for the Washington Post, spoke to the Texas Standard about the allegations. So, they asked, you began your story centering around a whistleblower in the healthcare field working at Parkland Health in Dallas. Can you say more about who this person is and what he noticed that led him down his path? Says he was the administrative director for the kidney transplant program at Parkland Hospital, and he noticed something that disturbed him quite a bit. He noticed that there was, over and over again, patients on the Parkland waiting list for kidneys being passed over, and those kidneys were going to patients at UT Southwestern. In fact, he found 36 times in 1 year that there was an organ that could have gone to help somebody at Parkland Hospital waiting list, that the doctors at the same time said, no, this kidney's not good enough, or the donor is not good enough. But then they decided it was good enough to put into somebody at UT Southwestern. And he began to think about to crop this up to Parkland's executives, and nothing got done. He also noticed that it was the same doctors that were covering transplants at UT Southwestern and at Parkland. And they were the ones who were saying, on the one hand, this kidney is not good enough for the Parkland patient, but it's good enough for the UT Southwestern patient. And he was concerned. So who does Parkland serve? Yeah, I think I read somewhere that is more poor patients than any other hospital in Texas. Around 60-something% of them were either on Medicaid or they were just straight up charity cases that the hospital covered. So they were, generally speaking, poor people. Let's stop here for a second. When you are a kidney transplant patient, let me make sure I get this. When you are a kidney transplant patient, you are given a particular number that you should go by, which is called the KDPI. And so the KDPI, it depends on the patient. It depends on the age of the patient, the health of the patient. It also depends on different factors. Also, blood type, tissue type, things like that. So the KDPI stands for Kidney Donor Profile Index, right? So this guides not only the patients, but also the doctors, physicians, clinicians, everyone on board your case to go by, okay, what number suits this person? So let's say, for instance, I'm 65 years old, my health is not that great, and I'm retirement age. I'm going to choose a KDPI. So here's how the KDPI goes. It goes from 99 to 1. 99 is, it's still good. All kidneys that are given are good. But this is the 99 is the bottom of good, right? And then as you get closer to the number 1, it becomes better. With KDPI, the lower the number, the better it is. So if you're at a 30 KDPI, then a 20 KDPI is better than the 30, and a 15 KDPI is better than the 20. Okay. So somebody, let's say they're 27 years old, their kidneys have failed, and they're in need of a kidney transplant, and they're fairly healthy, and they have a lot more life to live. They're going to be given a kidney with a lower KDPI number, because as far as life expectancy, theirs is a lot longer. So they don't want that person to have to come in, over and over and over for kidney transplant after kidney transplant after kidney transplant. They want that kidney to last as long as it can. Now, the KDPI is for kidneys that are from deceased donors, also known as cadaver. Deceased donors may have different, health issues or lack thereof, which may affect the KDPI level that they are donating. So if you get somebody that's 21 years old, never drinks, doesn't smoke, prime of their health, and then suddenly they pass away, now the KDPI will also depend on if it's a brain death or a cardiac death. If it's a brain death, the KDPI may actually be higher, because then all they got to do is just keep the organ running, and it doesn't lower the KDPI as much, right? Or it doesn't raise it, I should say. If it's a cardiac death, that means that the blood is stopped. If the blood is stopped, that means that the process of getting oxygen to that particular organ is not as readily available, which means it starts the deterioration process at the moment it stops getting oxygen. So because of that, somebody passing away from brain death, their organs are actually slightly more and better intact than somebody who has cardiac death, right? When it comes to your KDPI, it's based on health conditions. It is never based on financial. Ever based on financial issues. It just doesn't happen. It's not supposed to happen that way. And so this is the index is used, right? So for somebody like myself, KDPI, I got my kidney before my 41st birthday. And so because I was only 40 years old, they were like, you know what? We want you to have a kidney with a kidney PI that's on the lower level, a lower number. The lower, the better. Now, a KDPI of somewhere near 1 or the greatest type of kidney you can get is one that's from a live donor, meaning family member, friend, somebody who did a kidney swap, what have you. If it comes from a live donor, that is the gold, not even a gold standard. That's diamond standard kidney right there. That is diamond standard. That means you cannot get a better kidney because that person is from a live donor, especially if that person is very healthy, doesn't smoke, doesn't drink, doesn't do any illicit drugs. They are, physically healthy, as far as cardiac health, all these different elements that come into involved with it. So that's why they always recommend living donor first at all costs, if you can. And if you don't get a living donor, then you start with a deceased donor. And you try to get as high or technically lower the KDPI number as possible. But it's never based on income. That is ethically wrong. I'm going to say it again. That is ethically wrong because now you're basically saying that somebody who has more money in their bank account, their life is worth more. If all lives are precious, then the person's financial status should not matter whatsoever. And anybody who is a great candidate for kidney, when it comes to the medical side, should be shielded from their financial status, period. Period. And from what we're seeing here, this is not happening at this particular hospital. Now, I wanted to give you guys that explanation. And I know it's a little long, but you guys need to know the background of how kidneys are chosen for different people. So it's not just blood type, tissue type, things like that. It's also the quality of kidney, who it came from, what was the health of the person that passed away, what was the condition of the person that passed away, whether it was a neurological or brain death, or was it a cardiac or heart death? Which one was it? That also depends on there. So it's these different factors that mix into it as well. But it's not based on income. All right, so it says, can you explain how various entities involved in organ donation can profit from this process? I mean, obviously, the hospital makes money from doing transplants at their hospital. They also make a lot of money on testing. There's also these groups called organ procurement groups. They all have financial incentives, to work for these and do these transplants. The interviewer asks, so explain to me then what seems to be going on. And I understand that there is some legal action happening as a result of the whistleblower activity. It says exactly. Now, this guy who was at Parkland, his name is Patrick Chase. This is somebody who knows the industry pretty well. He's been 15 years in it, and his lawsuit sort of takes aim at a lot of these groups. I mean, there's a lot of good work being done and a lot of lives being saved. But at the same time, there's been numerous complaints and allegations about the way the transplants are being done. In fact, just yesterday, HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. basically closed down the group at Miami that was doing organ procurement, which was another thing that pops up in Patrick Chase's lawsuit. So what specifically is Patrick Chase alleging with his lawsuit? Well, it's actually very broad. It takes aim at Parkland Hospital, at UT Southwestern, at a place he worked at in Illinois, an organ procurement group in New York, another in New Jersey, and at the Southwest Transplant Alliance, which is the organ procurement group in Dallas. His broad claim is that the system is driven too many times by greed, and in the case of the Parkland Southwestern kidneys, bias against Parkland. Or, I mean, you could put it in a positive way. You could take favoritism towards UT Southwest. It says, What about the healthcare groups named as defendants in this lawsuit? Did they talk to you for this story? No. Either UT Southwestern or Parkland talked to me, citing the litigation. They didn't want to engage with me. Are the regulatory bodies supposed to oversee the ins and outs of the organ donation industry? Yes. Health and Human Services, the federal government. One of the things that a lot of people may or may not realize is that basically Medicare pays for every single kidney transplant in the country. So when people talk about, oh, we're going to cut Medicare and Medicaid, boom, there you go. So now when they talk about cutting Medicare and Medicaid, guess what? They're wanting to cut people who rely on these life-saving transplants that would not just improve their quality of life, but save their life. You all know at least one person that's gotten a kidney transplant. You're watching him right now. There may be other people you run into that may have gotten a transplant. It could be a pancreatic transplant. It could be a heart transplant. It could be a lung transplant. It could be a liver transplant. It could be many different types. And these either improve the quality of life or save the person's life entirely. And guess what? You probably don't know unless they told you. But then, how do they get it? Well, how is it getting paid for? Transplants are extremely expensive. Watch the movie John Q with Denzel Washington. You know how much it costs to do a kidney transplant? I'm sorry, a heart transplant? Back then, they were talking about $250,000. Back then. I shan't to think how much it would cost right now. Not just that, but also the testing. So after you get a transplant, they have to test you constantly to prevent rejection, to see if rejection may happen so that they can stop it before it happens. So the funny thing is, post-kidney transplant, they had me come, so they said, estimate, depending on your health post-transplant surgery, you may have to come in 3 times a week for the first month, 2 times a week for the second month, and then 1 time a week for the third month. Depending on the health, right? So that means 3 times a week for the first month. That means they are monitoring your health post-transplant. And the most dangerous time is post-surgery. Boom, boom, boom. And that is how it is with any transplant, because they have to make sure they prevent rejection. And that costs money. A lot of money. On top of that, the medications. You have anti-rejection meds, which suppress your immune system. You have antiviral meds, antibacterial meds. I'm sorry, antibiotic meds. You have meds for, either raising or lowering blood pressure, whatever you may need. All these different things that come into effect. And these medications cost the thousands of dollars per month on top of it all. So there is money being made in the transplant sector. A transplant is also an elective surgery. Hospitals make bank. They make bank on these surgeries. They just do. And so, of course, they want to do transplants. That's their bread and butter. So that's something that's behind that a lot of people don't realize. Let's continue on. It says, we all know Medicare is a program that provides for the medical needs of people over 65, but it's also covered everybody with end-stage kidney disease. As a result, they pay for all kidney transplants. I want to highlight this. We all know that Medicare is a program that provides for the medical needs of people over 65, but they also cover everybody with end-stage renal disease. As a result, they pay for all kidney transplants. So, to prove that this is true, let me see here. Where is it at? All right. I'm going to hide the number, but boom, Medicare. I get it. So when people go, oh my goodness, well, you only get Medicare if you're over the 65. Nope. Because if you're an end-stage renal disease patient, then guess what? Your dialysis as well as your expenses for kidney transplant are paid for from Medicare. See? Medicare. And so, yes, people go, oh, well, we need to cut Medicare. Oh, so you want to cut funds that would help people to be able to keep getting dialysis to maintain their life. You want to cut that. Now, don't get me wrong. There's a lot of problems with Medicare, but the problems with Medicare is that it doesn't go far enough when it comes to covering people. And this is why a lot of people were talking about single-payer healthcare. I am beyond single-payer healthcare. I think we need a fully nationalized healthcare system so that we wouldn't have to need to insure anybody at all, not even from the government, just give the citizens healthcare. But this is something that a lot of people don't realize. Now, I am grateful that we have this program for people like myself who have end-stage renal disease, who suffer from chronic kidney failure. I am grateful for that. The thing is like, if people want to talk about cutting Medicare, then guess what? They're talking about also cutting services to people like myself who were on dialysis. So there's basically nonprofits covering every inch of the United States that are given government-granted monopoly to do organ procurement. That is like they're the ones who get your organs if you're an organ donor, and then they in turn bring those to the transplant centers. And if it's a kidney, it's all paid for by the government. Excuse me. By the way, statistically, there's over 109,000 organ transplants that are done every single year. Over 90,000 of them are kidneys alone. So most transplants are kidney transplants. Most transplants are. Now, let's continue on. So you say nonprofit, and I think, well, what about this financial motive then? What is the idea here? If they're nonprofits, how is greed a factor there? It says, well, just to sustain your nonprofit, they're trying to build up their company. He makes claims that there are luxe office buildings and salaries. And in some cases that I've seen, actually in the Miami case, or in a lot of those cases, that people are abusing the payment system. That's one of the reasons that they closed the Miami place. So just because it's nonprofit does not mean that they're still not trying to maximize as much money as they possibly can. The process is not taken and put into some account and given to shareholders. Is that money is distributed to the leadership within the organization, and then they can increase their salaries or expense accounts and things like that to go up exponentially. So there's still greed involved in the nonprofit industrial complex that a lot of people don't talk about. There's a lot of greed involved. This is why I talk about a nationalized healthcare system so that we won't even need them. Because if you have a nationalized healthcare system, you're not going to need these nonprofits for organ procurement. It wouldn't be necessary. Right. Exactly. I hear you thinking in your brain. All right. So it is clear what the next shoe to drop might be. What happens next with this lawsuit? It says it isn't clear. It's called a quietom or whistleblower suit. And in those cases, the government can join if they feel like the government has been ripped off in a substantial way. So far, they haven't joined. They could still, but at this point, it's just Patrick Chase against the 7 or so entities that he sued. So this is what's going on at this particular hospital at UT Southwestern. But there's another one where they're going through controversy as well. And I want to get into this too, because we have so many people that are being overlooked, all because of their financial standing for things that shouldn't bear any, it shouldn't be tied to your finances. So let's take a look at this. So this is out of the Chicago Tribune. It says lawsuit accuses Loyola University Medical Center of doing risky organ transplants to boost revenue. So it says Loyola University Medical Center knowingly performed organ transplants on unsuitable patients to boost Medicare billing, leading to harm and death, according to former hospital official who recently unsealed federal lawsuits alleges at a larger scheme to extract federal and state funds from a system meant to support organ donation and save lives. Patrick Chase, that name comes up again, former executive director for Loyola Solid Organ Transplant Programs and outpatient dialysis clinic, alleges the lawsuit that Loyola had area hospitals transfer their sickest patients for transplants. Loyola would then list these patients on an organ donor list as status 1A, meaning the patient was unlikely to live more than a few days without a transplant. This put the patient at the top of the donation list, and they were regularly able to match with the needed organ. But the Maywood Hospital did not properly screen patients before carrying out the transplants, according to the lawsuit. Instead, the suit contends that the hospital focused on billing and profitability, noting that Medicare would reimburse the hospital for discharging the patients, even if the reason for discharge was death. Oh my gosh. And this is why I talk about nationalizing the healthcare system, because you can give us single payer healthcare all you want. Hospitals like this are still going to exist. This is why I've moved beyond Medicare for all. I say nationalize it, meaning that instead of it being for profit, it is owned by the people. Owned by the people. Just like how they have the National Health Service in the UK, well, guess what? We need to have a National Health Service in the United States. Hospitals, dialysis centers, and nursing homes, physical therapy, all these different type of medical facilities, clinics, infusion centers, all these things, medical device manufacturers, the companies that manufacture machines like dialysis machines, like Braun and Fresenius, yes, those all should be nationalized. all of them. Because if their goal is to always make money, even if you have single payer, they're going to be trying to extract as much profit from the government as possible. So when people look at me and they go, oh, well, you're not for Medicare for all. It's like Medicare for all is a step in the right direction, but it ain't it. It's a half measure. It is not good enough. It's not far enough. I want y'all to dream bigger. Medicare for all is actually reformist. I'm not a reformist, baby. So this is the thing. We need something far and away better. And the problem is, a lot of times, people just accept, well, we just have to have single-payer healthcare. Dream a little bigger, y'all. Dream a little bigger. Let's continue on. Many of the patients died soon after Loyola provided these improper transplants. Loyola tolerated these deaths and continued unsafe practices to maximize Medicare billings. The hospital also double billed Medicare for certain expenses and inflated costs on its cost report to Medicare. That's all from what the lawsuit alleges. It says a Loyola spokesperson declined to comment on lawsuit. It says in court documents, Loyola dismissed allegations that it somehow acted improperly by allegedly choosing to treat especially sick patients and defended its decision-making process. I'm going to tell you guys this. So, and this was earlier this year. When I was still on dialysis, I was at dialysis earlier this year, and it was the morning time, and we were talking, and we patients were sitting in the waiting room. We started getting on talking about transplants, and I was talking about trying to get on the list. And one of my fellow patients, she was a lady, probably in her mid to late 60s, Black woman. She's like, I would love to get on a transplant list, but I can't. And we were like, why? She said, because the transplant surgeon said that if I got a transplant, I would most likely die on the table. So they refused to give her a kidney transplant. They'd rather her stay on dialysis and live a complete life than risk giving her a transplant and then she dies on the table right there. What the surgeon did was responsible, because he was more focused on, I don't want you to die. Your life is worth more than the reimbursements and the money that we will get from Medicare. Your life is worth more. That doctor acted in a very principled and ethical way. The problem is that some places, some hospitals, they do not want to do that. I found it really funny how there was two hospitals I was regarding for kidney transplant. I'm not going to name the other hospital that I was looking at, but one hospital that I was considering, they were more strict in my qualifications for transplant. But the funny part was, I filled out an application and they were like, well, your BMI is a little too high. We have strict guidelines. Your BMI has to be lower than this and blah, blah, blah. Okay, fine. But then I went with Tampa General Hospital because just something in my spirit told me, go with Tampa, go with them. And I'm glad I did. Because when I started doing testing, because I went through the entire learning process, the orientation, I went to the classes, all these different things you have to do in order to qualify for being on a transplant list. I went through all of that pretty much almost I almost completed it all for Tampa General. But this other hospital, I hadn't started a thing. I never even went to the orientation to see if I wanted to continue. They already started trying to schedule me for testing for all these different things and jumping the gun without even me sitting down with them and going over their own process. That was a red flag. I was like, wait a minute, you guys are scheduling me for tests and trying to get my results from my test without me actually continuing on and actually even getting the orientation done and getting all the facts before I choose? So now it makes me think, is this hospital trying to make money off of me? Is that their principal thing, or are they trying to help people? Which matters more? And so my question is, would I be doing as well as I am right now if I had gotten a transplant from that other hospital? Maybe, maybe not. But this is why it is important that we have a nationalized healthcare system, because we should not have to regard that. We shouldn't have to think about that. Like John in the movie John Q said, sick, help. Sick, help. Nothing else. Let's continue on. All right. Says Chase was hired in October 2020 at Loyola, where he began raising concerns about increased organ transplant failures, deaths, infections, and return to operation rooms rates. For instance, Chase alleges that the lawsuit at Loyola transplanted a liver into a patient with alcohol-related illness and unresolved alcohol use problems. If such a patient were to relapse, it could damage the liver and potentially require another transplant, according to the lawsuit. This is another thing that a lot of people need to think about. By and large, transplant physicians and surgeons, they do not want to waste a good organ on somebody that's just going to ruin it. And this is why compliance is such a huge issue. And before you get a transplant, right? Here's what they do. All right. I'm on dialysis. I apply to get on the list. You know what these guys do? And this was good on Tampa General. What they do is they will look at your labs for like the last couple years and how consistent you are at taking your prescribed meds and doing the things prescribed to you in order to keep your health at optimal level while going through, for me, it was dialysis, or for other people, whatever they may be going through. And if you're not in what they call compliance, how can they expect you to be compliant with a new organ when you can't even be compliant before you get the new organ? You have to act as if you already have it by making sure you do all the things that are necessary in order to keep your quality of life up. And so if the hospitals like these are looking past that and just throwing the organ inside you in order to be able to make some money off of Medicare, well, yeah, of course you're going to have people who have alcohol problems and you give them a brand new liver and they relapse because they never resolve that issue. So therefore that person is going to do exactly the same thing. And then they're going to ruin that perfectly good organ that could have went into somebody who actually did work through all those issues. Or if they didn't have issues with alcohol, but they needed an organ transplant, it could have went to them. It's like people have to work through these things in order to be able to receive it because they don't want to waste it. And so this is what happens. And you're not even taking that into consideration. You're not even giving that in regard. It says the suit contends that Chase discussed that this patient's case was with the hospital's inpatient chief medical officer, who allegedly responded to that to increase transplant volume, we need to be willing to take risks. Ultimately, the suit states that the patient did not get better and stayed in the hospital for 128 days. The patient was on Medicare, and all 128 days of the hospital stay were paid for by Medicare. If Loyola had not done the transplant, the patient would not have needed a 128-day hospital stay, which means that that hospital made a shit ton of money off of a man relapsing. It says the suit also alleges psychiatric and social work teams regularly raised red flags when helping to determine whether patients should receive donated organs, but were continually overruled by the hospital surgeons. It says the patients regularly experience adverse incidents, including multiple cases of graft failures and deaths. So this really talks about hospitals that are using transplants to make as much money as possible, whether it's through foregoing a lot of the risk factors that they should be paying keen attention to, and then applying the contingencies, for that risk factor. Like if that person is not compliant, or if that person, is not, in the right health at that moment, instead of holding back and saying, wait, we need this person to improve in their health in this area, or we need to see improvement in that area. Instead, they're just chasing the bag. And it's the same thing with the hospital in Texas, where they were favoring affluent patients over ones who were poor for transplants. And this is all part of the class divide. This is all part of the class war. The class war is also involved in your health, because health equals what? Wealth. Right. So if health equals wealth, then guess what? Guess who is choosing to have the better health? Who just gets to decide who has the better health? It is the people, the parasite class at the top, because they want the money. They want the resources. They want it all. And so this is why it's so important for us to fight for a more egalitarian system. And you're not going to get it through capitalism. It is impossible. And so to people who, complain, oh my gosh, the lines are longer under a social healthcare system. Guess what? First of all, the lines aren't necessarily longer, because here in the United States, we have long ass lines too. And it's backlogged because either people don't have the money, or people don't have the resources to be able to get the medical care. Or these hospitals and medical facilities, they will cut different programs out so that it causes longer lines in other healthcare facilities. Like there was one, I think it was in More Perfect Union, where there's a hospital, a local rural hospital, that actually cut maternity, labor and delivery out of their hospital. They cut out labor and delivery. And so who is that? So when people will decide to have a kid, that's dangerous, because now they got to travel, a far ways away just to be able to give birth. Healthcare should be a public good, nothing more, nothing less. It should be a public good and should be treated as such. And there should not be paywalls to our health. And we should not be exploited just to be able to fill and line the pockets of some executives at a hospital because they want to take another vacation or have a yacht or they want to have another house. Because our health matters just as much as anybody else's. All right, go ahead and like the stream. Thank you so very much to everybody for this one. Man, that story pissed me off. That got me livid. But let me know what you think. Let's go and check to see if we have any Rumble rants here. All right. All right, we're good on the Rumble side. Let's take a look, see if we have any gifted subs. All right. Don't get the subs just yet. All right, let's go into the chat. Kime says JB in the place to be, and he got what it takes to rock the mic, right? Thank you very much, Kime. Good to see you. Let me see. Chris says, thanks for explaining the kidney index, JB. Going to educate myself further on that. Yep. Thank you very much. SG says, so wrong. Yeah, it is very wrong. Yep. Sean says, I think I now know why my spouse doesn't trust doctors. In a for-profit system, it just doesn't work, man. Edward says, if they're cutting Medicare and Medicaid, which would pay for kidney transplants, then it goes back to the people who are wealthy, where they can pay for it. They are the first to get it. Absolutely. I'm sorry, did you say a transplant is an elective surgery? Yeah. Yeah. I think I used the wrong word. Let me correct myself. But at the same time, they do make a lot of money off of transplants. So let me correct myself. It says, no, transplant surgery is generally considered non-elective life-saving procedure due to end-stage organ disease, though some aspects like living donor transplants can be planned in advance. While a specific living donor transplant is planned elective procedure, the recipient's need for a transplant itself is not elective as it addresses a severe life-threatening condition. So yes, so this is the nuance, of it, is that you can and this is what they told me when researching about transplants, is that if I had a living donor, then I can actually schedule my transplant surgery. Versus getting a deceased donor, you have to keep that phone on at all times, and you can get a call at 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, and say, we have a kidney for you. And then you're up and out, to get it done. So my apologies. I stand corrected. Thank you very much for that, Egg 64. Fire Rippo says, Lee Camp got me off calling the scumbag warmongers the ruling elite. I call him Robert Barons. Now I'm 100% positive someone from RBN hooked me on to Robert Barons. I don't use that robber barons because it's kind of antiquated. I just call them the parasite class because that's exactly what they are. There's nothing positive, nothing beneficial for parasites. All they do is they take and take and take, and they leave nothing beneficial for the host. And so this is why I call them parasites. But you can use robber barons. It's really just semantics, but that's how I describe them. Edward says nationalized healthcare is the way to go. No more fighting with healthcare companies as to why they didn't cover the cost of your services, where the insurance company has nothing to do with your health. Absolutely. SG says Medicare actually keeps the hospitals going. It's not private insurance, which is profitable enough to run a hospital. Which means, by what you're saying, which means that if you cut Medicare, you're literally cutting healthcare for other people too. Right? It's just a sick system. All right, Ripple says, holy jeebus, they are so disgusting. Yeah, parasite class. Yeah. Thank you very much, Sean. I will do that as well. All right, guys. So it's time for me to head on out. I gotta get going. I'm gonna eat something because it's gonna have to be a light snack because dinner's at 8 anyway. So, but thank you guys so much for tuning in to the stream. I hope you guys enjoyed yourself. Thank you so much to Ms. Rasha from the Florida Palestine Network for joining me. That was a great conversation, and I hope that more and more people will, talk about not just what's going on in Palestine, but also connect the dots of what's going on there with what we are dealing with here and see how we're all connected when it comes to our collective liberation. And we are all got the same boot on our necks that's oppressing them as well as oppressing us. So thank you very much for that. Everybody, I will catch you guys on, I'm thinking, I will be on Nick's channel from RBN. I will be on his channel on Friday evening. So that should be a really good show. So that's going to be cool. It's going to be basically the Black Rose Brigade, comes back. It's going to be fun. So yeah, guys, thank you so very much for that. And I think we're pretty much good. All right, guys, water your plants, water yourselves, leave the world better than you found it. Smoke them if you got them, drink them if you got them. If you ain't got them, then watch something funny because joy is revolutionary, or read because reading is fundamental. I love you guys for watching. You guys take care of yourselves. Have some cheesecake. All right. And forehead kisses. I'll see you guys in the next one. Have a nice day. Good night. Thank you so much for watching, and I appreciate it from the top and bottom of my heart. If you'd like to see any more, you can look here.